But what I do want to say with respect to Brandon Miller, I don't know this young man, and I hope the best for him. And he seems nice, in his interviews. I don't know about his GOAT picks, but Paul George is one of my favorite players.
Those were questionable.
I won't hold. If Paul George is his favorite player, I don't have an issue with that. If Paul George is his GOAT, that's interesting. But people are allowed to say someone is their GOAT. But that being said, last night during the coverage of the draft, Malika Andrews asked a question about how what evolved with Brandon Miller would impact him, in terms of his draft status. And people were upset, criticizing her. And I'm saying that lightly in terms of, for asking a question about that. She was called out her name. She was disrespected. And all right, we just got to stop. We got to stop with the disrespect, when you don't agree with someone's opinion. And I know it's not going to stop because I'm saying it, but Kelsey, you're a Black woman who works in sports. I'm a Black woman who works in sports. I'm only assuming you've been called out your name because I have been repeatedly. It's not okay. And I just, people, I understand this is a happy day for Brandon Miller, but you know who it's not a happy day for? Jamia Janae Harris's family, her child who lost a mother, right? It's a painful time for them. That could be a triggering moment for them. We don't know. Someone's life was lost not that long ago. He facilitated that, whether people like that fact or not, right? Probably unintentionally, which is why he hasn't been charged with a crime, which is why he is assisting the prosecution with this case. He's an assisting witness. But at the end of the day, this is an ongoing case. It's an ongoing matter. Malika is doing her job. It is news. It's not going anywhere. He's going to be asked about it, probably until the situation is resolved, right? Probably until the matter is done. Then when the matter is actually done, he'll be asked about it again. It's going to be with him, okay? And I don't know that if it wasn't Malika Andrews, that someone else bringing that up would have been attacked in the same way. I don't know that she would have been called a bitch and so many things and out of her name if it wasn't Malika Andrews. So we need to stop. We need to stop. She's doing her job. She didn't say anything bad about Brandon. And I think this is an individual choice for those who cover. Yes, some people can make the decision that they're not going to focus on that, or they're not going to ask a question about that. And I don't think she focused on it. She asked a question about it. But some people may choose to. And there's nothing wrong with that because it honestly is news. And it's ongoing. It's not some matter 10 years ago. Please, we need to stop disrespecting women in sports. We need to stop disrespecting Black women in sports altogether. And she's just doing her job. You can disagree and not like it, fine. We don't need to call her all kinds of names. And I just, I'm sorry. I know this is about the draft, but it really bothered me.
No, don't apologize, Nat. It needs to be said. I think you're touching on everything. And I know this is probably going to be a little bit longer, but I have to say this. I think it's very important to say, Malcolm X, there's a great Malcolm X quote where he said the most disrespected, unprotected person in this country is the Black woman. And we see this time and time again. Unfortunately, not just in sports, but in business and so many others. And we're attacked in ways and we're not protected in so many different ways. And I think, as you said, Malika Andrews is a trained journalist. She's trained at the highest levels. That's why she got to that position that she's in now. And I think sometimes fans forget this. We're journalists. We cover these guys. Sometimes as a fan, you don't realize because you can love a player so much, you don't want to see their downfall. You don't want to see their bad sides. But as a journalist, we have to cover the whole story and all that entails and all that involves. And so with Brandon Miller, all that's happening outside of basketball, that is part of his story, whether you like it or not. And us doing our due diligence means that we have to cover that. Now, I get fans saying, why does that have to keep constantly being brought up? But let's remember, this story did have an impact. We didn't know if this was going to drop his draft stock. So this story actually is relevant to the NBA draft. I could see people, and I'm somebody, that lives in DC, in Baltimore area. I kind of remember this during the Ray Lewis situation. And even Ray Lewis is a guy who you could still say, Nat, to this day, people still bring up a case, right, that you could say, is long gone, but it's still part of Ray Lewis's story. Now, maybe you don't like if people bring it up or not, but again, this is us doing our due diligence, our work as journalists, and making sure that the audience and viewing audience knows. Remember, when you turn into the NBA draft, you don't know who's watching. You don't know who's caught up to what point. And so I think, Malika Andrews, keep doing you. Let Twitter talk. They're always going to talk. But I think attacking her at her name, I think we just lost how to have this civilized conversations. You can disagree with somebody, but do you need to get to that point where you need to disrespect that person? I think Malika gets disrespected time and time again. So many Black women in sports get disrespected time and time again. Now, I will also say, I did tweet, I hope this is a new start for Brandon Miller. It's going to be hard for him. I think he's a young man. He needs to learn. But as you said, we can't forget someone's life was lost. There is a young boy now who's going to grow up without his mother, and we cannot take away from that part of this story. We're going to continue to say her name. Her name needs to be said, because this is a young woman who should still be here with us today. This is still a boy who should be able to play with his mom. But Brandon Miller, I also get that, he's younger. We still need the legal case to play out. But all in all, this was part of his life. This will always be part of his story. And now it's going to be up to him to show he's bigger than basketball. He's going to have to try to convince fans, who he is as a person. But it is only right if those questions come up. You can't bring anything up if nothing happens. So all in all, to say, best wishes to Brandon Miller. But I also cannot, and both of us cannot forget, a family that's hurting right now has lost a daughter, and they're still looking for answers. So again, fans, be mad if you want to, but we're journalists. We're more than fans. And again, we've took journalistic oaths. We've been trained in this, and this is us doing our jobs to our full due diligence. And that's what we owe you all as people who trust in us to tell these stories. So just have to add that, Nat. So don't apologize. This needs to be talked about.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And, I will say to Brandon's credit, he said he's learned, about the company he keeps. And I think that's a good lesson. And look, this is an ongoing criminal matter, so he can't speak on it much, but I hope that he does eventually express some kind of remorse, something to the family of Jamia, but it's obviously not something he can speak about right now. No. So until we know more, this will be something that's there. And people, you just gotta get over the fact that it's part of his story.
Hey, thank you for watching Brother from Another. If you haven't hit that subscribe button, go ahead and do that now. Don't forget, you can catch us 3 to 4 weekdays on PeacockTV.com and on Sirius XM Channel 85.